Hey guys, Paulie from Meldrum Performance Coaching and the Complete Personal Trainer Podcast. So today, Abcast, we are going to be talking about how to train the abs correctly. So this is a really fun topic, one that I've been researching for 17 years, long time. I've been focused on the abs, and like I came from the abs originally when I first started training from purely an aesthetic standpoint, like most people do. And I got heavily into functional work of the abs, looking at core stability, rehabilitation, all that kind of stuff. And I found a lot of things that work, a lot of things that don't work. I've been wrong and I've been right. So I've probably changed my mind on about 12 times by now. So there's a number of different things that we need to look at the abs. So how I personally work with abs with my clients who are looking at achieving ripped abs, like six pack, etc. First thing is body weight reduction done via calorie deficit and structured cardiovascular activity. So really simple. I want to get that out of the way first, that there needs to be some form of calorie deficit. I don't care how you create it. I don't care if you create it with tracking. I don't care if you do it by eliminating a certain food group. I don't think that's the best way to go about it, but nevertheless, some people get success from it. As long as you've achieved a calorie deficit, which is the common denominator between most successful diets, well, actually every successful diet, I don't really care. Cardiovascular exercise can also be used for creating a calorie deficit as well, particularly if someone's quite of a lower body weight, like a lower body mass, like a smaller person, and simply reducing their food anymore isn't feasible. You can actually just do more activity, which can be very good because it has other benefits as well in terms of insulin sensitivity, increased cardiovascular health, yada yada yada. Anyway, so for abs, two ways we can look at it: functional and I guess aesthetic type drills. So we're going to start with functional. Now, abs are quite a complex muscle. There's many different abs that we have to look at: transverse abdominis, we need to look at rectus abdominis, internal and external oblique. I consider the serratus anterior to be part of that system as well, and also the quadratus lumborum and the rectus spinae muscle. So it's a lot of different muscle groups, and I've left a few out there on purpose. But we need to look at the abs, first of all, from a control perspective. So the first thing to getting ab work working right is helping someone identify how to breathe and respirate correctly and create a opposition of their pelvic floor and their respiratory diaphragm. And if you get that kind of cylinder shape correct, what happens there is that the ability to stabilize and brace against heavier forces, such as a barbell on your back or a deadlift barbell in front of you, etc., becomes better. So function improves from that and strength. So from there, we need to look at the movements we need to prevent when we're doing strength training, because a lot of the exercises that have the highest EMG for abs, which means the highest amount of muscle activation, are things like chin-ups and ab wheels. So exercises where we're not actually moving the abs through space, but they're not contracting or shortening, they're working isometrically. So we need to look at anti-flexion exercises, anti-rotation exercises, anti-side flexion exercises, and anti-extension. Flexion extension. Anyway, all those anti-movements are quite important. Now, I used to have standards for that in terms of how much weight people had to hit. They were kind of arbitrary. They don't really matter so much as such, as long as the client can perform each of those movements well. So performing these movements with rib cage down, pelvis tucked under, abs engaged, rib cage brought in together nice and tight to have a solid abdominal contraction. That's when you know you're doing those things really well. If you're doing these things really well and you're getting good stability through there, what you should find is that mobility that's a little bit more distal, so at the hip, should improve. So it's a really good sign that your ab work's actually paying off. You're actually getting more mobility through your hips, and that you're able to do more stuff. You're able to squat more, you're able to deadlift more. All those things are a really good sign that ab work is working. From there, though, we need to learn to create those movements as well. It's not just being able to resist those movements. So a lot of people who get into core stability think about, oh, just go resist that and that's stability. We need to also have dynamic control through these ranges of motion as well. So exercises that create rotation, exercises that create flexion, that create extension, create lateral flexion can be really important for the abs. But then we need to look at the muscle fiber type composition for the best type of outcomes, and then the kind of training goal after that. So let's break down abs by training goal. If you're a powerlifter, strength athlete, probably more often than not, the anti movements are going to be ideal for you if you're a powerlifter, just because 99.9% of your training and your competition happens in the sagittal plane. You squat, bench, and deadlift. You need abdominal strength for that. Simple as that. That's that argument kind of sorted real quick. If you're going for hypertrophy, so your body composition, what you do need to do is you need to actually avoid overly loading the obliques. You need to minimize that as much as you can. So heavy unilateral offset farmer's walks and all those exercises may not be the best for you. There's a few reasons why. First reason is they're quite systemically fatiguing. So that extra fatigue will be used to grow another muscle. So that's probably a better use of time. But having a blocky waist is not good for physique athletes. So if you look at strongman competitors who do a lot of unilateral carrying type work, they've got really big blocky waists, which isn't ideal for physique. It's not that it's a bad thing, but for physique competitors, the waist wants to come in and they want to have six-pack definition and then psoas definition. Obliques will be defined because they're so lean, but they're not particularly huge. So avoiding that type of work is important. So side flexion crunches and all that kind of stuff you don't really need to do. For physique athletes, it's basically working on flexion type exercises of the trunk, starting from flexing the trunk down or from flexing the hips up. So working on the abdominals from that area, and you can also do isometric work such as ab wheels, dragon flags, and things like that. In terms of the actual muscle, you want to, the ab shape is very genetically defined. It's something that you're kind of born with. So if you're not born with symmetrical looking abs when you're really lean, you're probably not going to get symmetrical looking abs at any point. So you want to look at hypertrophying the muscle. So for hypertrophy of an ab muscle, it works the exact same as every other muscle. You don't need to go through these crazy, ridiculous high rep 50, 100 rep sets. It's looking at that 5 to 30 rep range, staying within a close constraint of failure. So, sticking within 4 to 1 rep of failure on your abdominal work. Really, that's all you need to know to grow your abs. If you're in sport and athleticism, then we need to look at using the abs for what they are. They're really good things for preventing movement, we know that, but also generating rotational torque. So for the best type of ab work, which also takes care of things like hip internal rotation, hip power, expressing power, medicine ball work, using a wall, using a partner, just throwing it out in the air, out in the park preferably so you don't break anything, is probably going to be the most useful expression of abdominal strength for an athlete. Because in athletic endeavors, it's normally running, cutting, jumping, moving around quite dynamically. So once you've got like a pretty good Pallof press, so anti-rotation capacity, building it up past a certain point isn't going to make us any better. It's kind of like with the analogy, like once you can back squat, I think it's 1.75 times your body weight, increasing the strength of your back squat won't make your vertical jump any better at all. So you're actually better off looking at increasing your rate of force development. So once your abs are at a certain point of strength for your athletic endeavors, it's then looking to be able to express that into different movement patterns. So medicine ball work is probably the best use of time for an athlete to train their core. If you have very little time to train, that's kind of the biggest bang for your buck that's going to give you the most power generation. So guys, when we're looking at ab training, let's go through the gamut here. Rehabilitation and getting things working right, anti-rotation, anti-flexion, learning to control the core is super important to that. And it should be part of most general physical preparation phases for any new client coming in. For strength clients who are looking more in the powerlifting type thing, the anti-movements are probably enough, get them stronger. They're going to get trained quite well with squat and deadlift anyway, but that's kind of like the limit that you need to take it to. Any additional ab training, like taking heavy flexion, side flexion, medicine ball work isn't necessarily going to carry over to making you better at your activity. For hypertrophy, avoid hypertrophying the obliques and doing abdominal exercises that have a high systemic fatigue cost, like farmers carries, etc. Focus on flexion-based movements to actually hypertrophy the abs, working in that 5 to 30 rep range, 1 to 4 reps shy of failure. And if you're an athlete, once you've got base level control, start looking at ways that you can express power with your abs using medicine ball throws is probably the most basic example of a good way to do that. So guys, there's some ways to train abs. Stay tuned where we might talk about biceps next, maybe pecs. Who knows? Speak to you soon.